The waltz, the blame game, and various other deflections. There seems to be a fundamental problem, both with men and women. Um, and I think the problem here is the nature of blame, that the man is all too willing to accept responsibility for what he does, even when the fault is simply not there. And I think this arises, as Barbaros has said many times, from the fact that we are conditioned and taught and perhaps indeed biologically ingrained to believe so that we as men have no value and that it is our responsibility to assume responsibility regardless of what happens. Um, and so that is this is extremely prevalent. And I wanted to cite a few examples. And I'll start off by mentioning a bit of a story about my last relationship, the last time I ever decided to participate in the so-called game, and something I've forsworn, but yes, as it were, it took a while for me to wake up to things. And I remember a while back talking to a fairly good friend of mine. He's a good guy, but I think he needs to become aware of certain things. And talking about the fact that my last ex cheated on me. Of course, they all cheated on me, and I'll get to that in a second. But the interesting thing is that he claimed that at the beginning of my relationship, I discussed with my previous ex that previous girlfriends had cheated on me because I thought it was an important issue to discuss and to bring it to her attention. He claimed that I, in fact, had steered her in the direction, this friend of mine, uh, somehow, in some vague manner, had steered her in the direction of being unfaithful and cheating on me by dint of the fact that I had, in the beginning, mentioned to her that these things had happened to me previously. And you see a pattern here. Um, it's very vague, but somehow it is my fault. Indeed, it is my fault because I'm the man. Now, this same friend of mine, many years ago, I remember him when he was younger and even unwiser, lamenting the destruction of a relationship and, of course, looking for the blame. And where did he look? He looked towards himself. Um, Women don't really look to themselves for the blame. They don't think what they've done. They don't think about what they've done wrong in a relationship, usually. So this is a recurrent phenomenon, and I just want to bring that first example up to say that even as a guy, even your male friends, it's an instinct. What did you do wrong? So the fact that I talked originally about the initial stages of my previous relationship, that things, it's important to me, that fidelity is important to me, didn't really matter because that very talk was the cause allegedly of her cheating on me, which personally I think is bollocks, but that's neither here nor there. But it shows a recurrent pattern of male blame, that we not only do women blame us for virtually every flaw and fault in the world, particularly within the so-called relationship, the so-called romantic relationship, we receive the blame as well. How many times have you heard, as a male, that you need to try harder, you need to make more of an effort? The female, of course, is told she needs to do what's best for herself. This is very common, and it really never ends. And I'm going to cite a few more examples. I have had a female acquaintance. It's unavoidable. You have to deal with women on some level. And I talked about relationships and women with her, and I don't think she's a feminist by any means, at least not officially, but women do love to cling to their privilege, don't they? So in my younger, more ignorant years, I went through the rituals. I bought excess dinners and what have you, and gifts. I fully concede my ignorance, and those were mistakes, and I am to blame for not waking up sooner. And and when I talk about that, though, as a general principle, this sense of entitlement that women have, the sense that they deserve something because they are, in fact, women. Uh, she says, with this particular example, the female says to me, well, it's really funny because you went along with all of it and what have you. And I suppose that to some extent that's true. And then she might say something to the effect of, if I say, well, okay, oh, sorry, if I say this to her, and I have done, um, if indeed I went along with it, there might have been a reason because, if I didn't go along with it, I wouldn't have gotten the so-called coveted sex. There are a lot of things that I would have had fights and arguments. So then comes the next deflection. And I want to talk about deflection, of course, because this is what it is. So why are you together with her to begin with? Why are you together with these women? With women, talking specifically to women about these things, it's a never-ending series of deflections. It's, first you went along with it, you explained to a larger measure why, the sex, but also just to avoid argument and whinging and dealing with the nastiness that women can display as a result of not getting what they quote unquote deserve. And then the next deflection, of course. Well, why were you together? So that is essentially also what Nawalt is about. Of course, that Nawalt is a massive deflection, and all of these deflections have something in common. Of course, is that they lack explicative power. They don't explain anything. That is what a deflection is. It is a turning away. And it's a big problem because I've come to the firm and unfortunate conclusion that with very few examples, I can think of a few on YouTube, you will never get a woman, feminist or otherwise, to concede that a woman indeed should take responsibility for herself, that a woman can commit ill, particularly within the sphere of so-called relationships. That is not going to happen. I've had enough experience, enough discussions, it simply doesn't happen. Somehow, somewhere, the man is to blame. And sadly, as I had to cite this example of my friend, that somehow, even as a man, you think, I certainly don't anymore, but he thinks that as a man, it's his fault, or in my case, it's my fault, as in I allegedly drove my ex to cheat on me. Or, there are more deflections. If all of your exes cheated on you, what is the common denominator? Well, of course, the common denominator is me, and because of that, it's my fault, of course. I'm the reason why they cheated. Who knows why? Well, um, if I say, well, what about their own character and blah blah blah, then the next deflection might come, and I've heard this is not all women are like that, or you need to be more careful about the women you select or the women you choose to be with. It's always my fault, or it's always the man's fault. Now, I've thought of a metaphor and analogy for Nawalt and for this whole ludicrous nonsense about you need to be more careful, you need to be more circumspect, and no doubt, I mean, in general in life, you need to be circumspect. But somehow that ultimately the blame lies on my shoulders, and indeed on all of my fellow men's shoulders. Well, the analogy I like to think of is when someone says